The Vos Carnath was, by galactic standards, an impressive ship. Gleaming obsidian hull, engines that hummed like a choir of very smug angels, and a crew that had never once lost a diplomatic engagement. So naturally, General Draxus Vel walked aboard the human training vessel Meridian like he owned the place, the furniture, and possibly the concept of oxygen itself. He did not own any of these things. He would learn this shortly. Painfully. Draxus was 7 feet of chitinous confidence, 3 centuries of unearned superiority, and a voice that boomed like he'd swallowed a subwoofer. He'd come to inspect humanity's newest batch of cadets, ostensibly as a gesture of interspecies goodwill. Mostly he'd come to remind everyone in the room that the Grethari Dominion considered humans adorable in the way you consider a golden retriever adorable, cute, harmless, and not invited to the big kids' table. Fascinating, Draxus said, strolling past a row of stiffly standing cadets, his 4 eyes doing a slow, unimpressed sweep. Such fragile little creatures. No exoskeleton. No venom glands. No claws to speak of. He paused. How do you people survive breakfast? Nobody laughed. Draxus laughed anyway, because apparently his species found his own jokes hilarious even when nobody else did. Somewhere, the narrator of this story would like it on record that this man clearly skipped the mandatory seminar titled, Do Not Underestimate the Primates, which, fun fact, every other species in this sector had already failed spectacularly. Draxus didn't know that yet. Give him 3 seconds. He'll get there. At the far end of the formation stood Cadet Talia Reyes, and if you'd asked anyone in that hangar to pick the least threatening person present, they'd have pointed straight at her. Average height. Slightly too big uniform. Chewing gum with the slow, insolent rhythm of someone who had given up caring what anyone thought approximately 4 years ago. She was, on paper, unremarkable. Middling scores in most subjects. Mediocre marks in diplomatic decorum, which, okay, fair, considering she'd once told a visiting ambassador his translator app made him sound like a Roomba having an existential crisis. She chewed her gum. She stood in formation. She looked bored in the specific way that suggested she found the entire universe mildly inconveniencing. Which, of course, was exactly why nobody in that hangar had the faintest idea what was about to happen. This one, he announced to his officers, gesturing at her like she was a museum exhibit, is exactly what I mean. Look at the posture. What is that, in your mouth? Are you eating during a formal ceremony, Cadet? Gum, sir, Talia said, not stopping. Keeps me focused. Fascinating, Draxus said again, apparently his favorite word, possibly his only word. On my world, cadets who displayed such insolence would be culled from the program within the hour. He turned to his entourage, delighted with himself. Shall we test her focus? A demonstration. For goodwill. The human commanding officer, Colonel Ashworth, opened his mouth to object. Draxus raised a hand, the universal gesture for, I outrank diplomacy right now, and Ashworth, wisely, shut it again. He did, however, allow himself the world's smallest smirk. The kind of smirk that says I know something you don't, buddy, and you are about to find out the hard way. Kneel, Draxus said to Talia. A show of respect. Humans understand hierarchy, yes. Kneel before rank. The hangar went very, very quiet. Talia looked at him for a long moment, gum clicking once between her teeth. Then, with all the theatrical grace of a woman auditioning for the world's most sarcastic ballet, she knelt. Slowly. Dramatically. One hand pressed to her chest like she was about to burst into song. Oh General, she said, voice dripping with the kind of sincerity that fools absolutely nobody, truly, your greatness knows no bounds. However shall humanity recover from this humbling display of your magnificent authority? A few cadets down the line made suspicious coughing noises that were definitely not laughter. Draxus, who apparently did not speak fluent sarcasm, a tragic gap in an otherwise advanced species, beamed like he'd just been personally blessed by the concept of respect itself. "Better," he said. "You see? Even the weakest creature understands its place, given proper." That was as far as he got. Here's the thing about 3 seconds. In a story, they don't sound like much. In real life, aboard a hangar deck with 200 witnesses, 3 seconds is an eternity, and General Draxus Vel was about to experience every single agonizing microsecond of it in excruciating clarity. Second 1, Talia's grateful kneeling position, it turned out, was not actually a kneeling position. It was a stance. A very specific, very deliberate stance that put her weight on the balls of her feet, her center of gravity coiled like a spring somebody had forgotten to tell was loaded. Second 2, Draxus reached out, not aggressively, more the smug, patronizing gesture of a man about to pat a dog on the head, to rest a claw on her shoulder in a gesture of, there, good primate. His hand never got there. Second 3, Talia moved. It wasn't flashy. That was the horrifying part. No dramatic flip, no action movie flourish. Just one clean, economical motion, a wrist grab, a redirect of momentum, a shift of weight, and General Draxus Vel, 7 feet of chitinous alien superiority, found himself face down on the hangar floor with his own arm folded up behind his back at an angle his species' anatomy really was not designed for. The whole thing took less time than it takes to read this sentence. "Sir," Talia said pleasantly, still chewing her gum, "you were saying something about hierarchy?" The silence that followed was the kind of silence that has weight. You could have heard a pin drop, if pins existed in whatever material Grethari currency was made of, and if anyone had the presence of mind to drop one instead of standing there with their mouths, or mandibles, or whatever, hanging open. Draxus made a sound. It was not a dignified sound. It was somewhere between a wheeze and the noise a balloon makes when you let the air out slowly to torment your younger sibling. "Release me," he managed. "This is, you cannot, do you know who I am?" "General Draxus Vel," Talia said helpfully. "Commander of the 3rd Grethari Fleet, decorated for the Kasari campaign, and apparently unfamiliar with the concept of reading the room." She adjusted the angle of his arm slightly. He made another balloon noise. "Fun fact, General, I did my thesis on Grethari joint mechanics. Turns out your exoskeleton's got a structural weakness right about here." "Mercy," Draxus wheezed, and the word came out so fast and so undignified that half the hangar had to look away just to keep from losing it entirely. "Please. I meant no, this was a misunderstanding of." "Oh, now it's a misunderstanding," Talia said, and even flat on the floor, pinned like a very large, very embarrassed insect, Draxus could hear the smirk in her voice. 90 seconds ago it was a demonstration of respect for hierarchy. Funny how fast hierarchy changes when you're the one on the bottom of it. It's worth pausing here to explain, for the aliens in the back who are presumably still catching up, Talia Reyes was not, in fact, a middling cadet with mediocre scores and a gum habit. That was the cover story. The real story, the one buried under 3 layers of classified paperwork and one extremely convincing fake transcript, was that Cadet Reyes had spent 4 years in a black ops program most of Earth's own government didn't officially acknowledge existed, specializing in close-quarters combat against exactly the kind of overconfident alien commander who thought a human kneeling meant a human surrendering. She'd requested the reassignment to cadet training herself. Something about wanting a break from being shot at by people who at least respected me enough to bring weapons. General Draxus had brought neither weapons nor respect. This, it turned out, was a mistake of truly historic proportions. The reaction in the hangar happened in waves, like dominoes falling if the dominoes were made of 200 humans trying very hard not to laugh in front of a foreign dignitary and mostly failing. First wave, stunned silence, the kind where everyone's brain is still buffering. Second wave, a single cadet near the back, nobody ever admitted who, let out a snort so undignified it echoed. Third wave, the entire hangar lost it. Cadets doubled over. One officer had to physically bite his own hand. Colonel Ashworth stood at the front with his arms crossed, the smirk from earlier having fully bloomed into the expression of a man watching his favorite sports team win in overtime. Draxus's own officers, meanwhile, were having a considerably worse afternoon. Because here's the thing about being an alien officer watching your general get folded like a lawn chair by a cadet who'd been quietly chewing gum 90 seconds earlier, it does something to your worldview. Specifically, it makes you reevaluate every single briefing document your species has ever produced about humans, all of which apparently needed a very large, very embarrassing addendum. Somewhere in the galactic administrative ether, you could practically hear 1,000 databases updating in real time. Species, Homo sapiens. Threat assessment, revise upward. Significantly. Also, do not let them kneel. Ever. It's a trap. Talia let him up eventually, mostly because Colonel Ashworth gave her a look that said okay, point made, let's not cause an interstellar incident. Draxus staggered upright, adjusting what remained of his dignity, which by this point could be measured in negative numbers. His communications officer, a nervous-looking Grethari who had clearly been hoping to survive this posting without incident, cleared her throat. General. Command is, requesting a status update. They saw the feed. Of course they saw the feed. Every diplomatic engagement was recorded. Somewhere in a Grethari command center right now, several very senior officials were watching their star general get face-planted by a human cadet in real time, and Draxus had approximately 4 seconds to figure out how he was going to explain this before it became the most watched piece of footage in Dominion history. Spoiler, he did not figure it out in time. Within the hour, Draxus received a transmission from his own high command that can be summarized as follows: a lot of yelling, several formal reprimands, immediate reassignment to a diplomatic liaison position, so remote it barely had an atmosphere, and, the cherry on top, a mandatory public apology to Cadet Reyes, broadcast across 3 star systems, which his superiors insisted on specifically because, quote, if we're going to be embarrassed, we're doing it properly. Draxus delivered that apology 2 days later, standing stiffly in front of a very unimpressed Talia, reading from a card because he'd apparently lost the ability to improvise sincerity. It was, by all accounts, one of the most uncomfortable 7 minutes in recorded diplomatic history. His species now uses his name as a verb. To pull a Draxus means to confidently underestimate something that is about to ruin your entire week. As for Talia, she went back to her cadet friends that evening like absolutely nothing had happened, still chewing the same brand of gum, still radiating the exact energy of someone who found the universe mildly inconveniencing. So, said her bunkmate, a cadet named Priya who'd watched the whole thing from 3 rows back, you just folded an alien general. In front of everyone. And now you're eating cafeteria mac and cheese like it's Tuesday. It is Tuesday, Talia said. That's not the point and you know it. Talia shrugged, unbothered, and went back to her food. He grabbed my shoulder without asking. Where I'm from, that's a conversation starter. Priya just stared at her. You're going to be famous, you know that? Like, actual headlines, Alien News Network famous. Cool, Talia said, entirely unmoved. Hope they get my good side. So. What's the moral of the story, you ask? Honestly, there isn't one, not really, unless you count, don't ask a stranger to kneel unless you're prepared to find out exactly why they're willing to. Which, frankly, should have been Rule 1 in every alien officer's handbook since roughly the dawn of interspecies contact, and yet here we are, still writing headlines about it. Somewhere out there, in briefing rooms across a dozen star systems, alien commanders are quietly adding a new footnote to their files on humanity. Approach with caution, especially the quiet ones, especially the ones chewing gum, and for the love of whatever you worship, do not ask them to kneel. Because 3 seconds later, you might just be the one begging.